Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic.
What do you think would be the condition of the United States today if Hillary Clinton had become president in January 2017? I'm more curious about where we'd be if Al Gore beat Bush in 2000. We would not have gone into Iraq for starters. And had two Supreme Court justices that would have been human. Assuming Hillary Clinton was simply an average president, nothing special, but also that she did not do anything astoundingly stupider than the average president, most of the differences would simply be from a lack of Trump. Roe v. Wade would not have been overturned. COVID-19 would likely have had a coordinated response significantly earlier, simply due to a lack of mismanagement. The National Pandemic Unit most likely would have remained a separate entity at the time COVID-19 started. There would not have been large numbers of vacancies at the NSA and TSA that made it difficult to control the influx of foreign nationals, and there would have been significantly more care about keeping Americans alive. National debt would be significantly lower simply due to a lack of the Trump tax cuts, and taxes for most Americans would not be significantly higher, since most benefits went to high-income owners and corporations in the first place. US would be significantly stronger on the world stage and better able to exercise soft power to solve problems, both because it had not pissed off every single country it was allied with, and because it would not have fired a bunch of the lifelong bureaucrats who actually understood how things worked. US would have made significant investments in infrastructure, specifically focused on climate change, an area which could drive massive amounts of future economic growth and which Trump was and is ceding to China. Even if her agenda was mainly unsuccessful, a simple lack of stupidity would have put us in a better place. COVID-19. COVID deaths in the US reached about 385,000 in 2020. When we passed the first 100K in 2020, I remember thinking, if even 100 died from COVID under Clinton's presidency, conservatives would have quite literally burned her at the stake. Not even 6 years prior, they were losing their shit over Ebola under Obama's presidency, and that resulted in only 2 deaths. I'm a fan of the show Stargate SG-1, and at one point an enemy alien race releases a plague against Earth. Through some sacrifices they figure out a vaccine against it, and the episode ends with them mentioning that there was an estimated 3,000 deaths worldwide due to the plague as a somber reminder of the cost. I last watched this episode shortly after the US got past the 200,000 mark with COVID. US would have made significant investments in infrastructure, specifically focused on climate change, an area which could drive massive amounts of future economic growth and which Trump was and is ceding to China. The TPP that Bernie and a lot of Redditors bitched and moaned about when Hillary was running was designed to put pressure on China. We are doing the exact opposite now. Our tariffs and belligerency towards longtime Asian allies has caused them to lean closer to China. This is a disaster we will feel for decades. She was, as usual, completely right. Not just Asian allies, all allies. I'm in Canada and have made a conscious effort to buy from North America my entire life. Made in USA, HON Mexico, Fabriqueo Canada. You will find these labels on most things in my house where at all possible. I live in North America, I want us to do well. Together. The USA has decided they don't. I still buy from Canada and Mexico. Made in USA may as well say poison on it at this point. The Supreme Court would not be the joke it has become. And we'd still have Roe versus Wade. Was it perfect? No. Was it a fuck ton better than what we have now? Yes. Women would still be alive who are now gone. Serious persistent systemic issues surrounding wealth inequality, but nonetheless significantly better than the reality today. Roe would still exist, and the president wouldn't have virtually unlimited power to govern by executive order. No Trump 3 in SCOTUS. That alone would be huge! Exclamation mark. Lots of people with rose-colored glasses here. The biggest thing is the Supreme Court would be liberal. That alone would have a pretty dramatic effect on the state of the country. Everyone mentions Roe, but flipping Scalia's seat could have meant chipping away at Citizens United. None of the Trump-related decisions that great expand presidential power. None of the deregulation decisions. We would still have Chevron. Maybe chip away at Shelby. It would. Let's recall that just in the last year the Supreme Court effective gave the president dictatorial powers. It killed Roe. It's going to kill gay marriage. Hell, it may make contraception illegal. Roe was based on the right to contraception and privacy, many may not know. It allows deportation flights without due process of US citizens, abortion laws that hurt women, and so much more. All because some people yelled "Don't threaten me" with the Supreme Court in 2016, then didn't vote, voted third party. Smarties, all of them. Well, the threat became reality, didn't it, faster than anyone expected. Roe wouldn't have been unturned for one thing. Supreme Court justices she appointed would have protected reproductive rights and other rights as well. It would be way better, and I'm not even a Hillary stan. In fact, I very much dislike her, but she would have been much, much, much better. Almost any of the candidates on either side would have been better than Trump. Even Jeb friggin' Bush was our last hope for a semi-sane candidate until he primaried out to Trump. Not wrong, at least Jeb wouldn't have turned his peers into fearful sycophantic yes men. Personally, I am further left than the Democratic Party itself though, so to be fair, I had no respect for Republicans to start. She may not have been world-changing, but she would have been stable and boring and we all would be fine. The far right would still be fringe, not an emboldened mainstream audience to target. Right-wing media would have nothing too crazy to push. Rather than pushing legitimately dangerous ideas popularized by the administration, they would be focused on the same completely harmless bullshit as before. Fox would be covering the equivalent of the tan suit and Dijon mustard incident and pretending they were apocalyptic, because there would be nothing of true import to scare their viewers. Boring and stable is the best type of government. Make politics boring again. Greater than right-wing media would have nothing too crazy to push. Ah yes, the media, famous for never pushing anything too crazy where Hillary Clinton is involved. She may not have been world-changing. She'd have been the first female president of the richest, most influential country in the world. One way or another, that would be world-changing. He meant her actions in office wouldn't be crazy. I can think of two things. We would still be in Afghanistan, or would have left in a considerably different way. Republicans would win the presidency in 2020. It would be a lot easier for swing voters to blame the Dems for the restrictions on personal liberty during COVID if a Democrat were in the White House in 2020. And how much better would our COVID response would have been had we not cut WHO funding pre-pandemic, hadn't refused the delivery of tests, had instituted international travel restrictions earlier, wouldn't have scapegoated China so all Asian people in the US wouldn't have had to fear being blamed and physically attacked, and above all didn't constantly sow doubt about how dangerous it was, the effectiveness of masking, and the vaccine. Republicans would hammer how bad a President Hillary was for allowing 10,000 people to die, and a significant amount of the population would join them. The idea of 1 million people dying would seem ludicrous to them. It would be better but not great. COVID was handled terribly around the globe. Extreme improvement. Sure, she'd make some missteps, but she wouldn't be kidnapping innocent people, shaving their heads and shipping them off to foreign prisons. She wouldn't build a concentration camp in the Sunshine State and let a puppy-shooting glamazon, silicone doll run the entire operation. Even with W's countless missteps, I don't believe he or any other president until Trump actively wanted to destroy the government and punish citizens who don't worship him. G-Dub was incompetent, but he wasn't hateful. He just made bad decisions and relied far too heavily on some of the miscreants in his cabinet. I mean, Cheney was so reviled that when he endorsed Kamala, other Republicans were like, lol, have fun with that. Whether Clinton in 2016 or Gore in 2000, the country could have been very different with more healthcare reform and access expansion, a SCOTUS liberal majority, significant climate policies as well as a major public health response to COVID instead of responding with deadly denial followed by suggestions to shove a light bulb up one's ass or inject some bleach. I don't care at all if I like the person in charge, but I care very much that they are fully competent to do the job and that they conduct themselves like an adult instead of a vengeful grifting criminal child. COVID death toll is a lot lower, for two reasons. Greater competency of the Clinton admin. The right-wing misinfo flows in the opposite direction, much more similar to the right-wing fear-mongering we saw in 2014 about Ebola. COVID is the Black Death. Hillary is lying, the death rate is well over 15%. Millions of Americans have died. Hillary created it and unleashed it on an innocent China. The red states go into full lockdown. SYG laws are amended to make it legal to shoot anyone not wearing a mask. Right-wingers lock themselves into their basements to save themselves from the Hillary plague, to the point that there are deaths from starvation. And the right demands that every single one of those deaths is recorded as a COVID fatality. This right-wing paranoia results in a much lower COVID case and death count during the summer of 2020. Hillary still loses in 2020, with a race as to which happens first, the election or the death toll reaching 100,000. With the GOP screaming that Trump would have kept the death toll below 50,000, election night in our universe it was at 250,000, and the death toll reaching 100,000 on November 5. The death toll continues to be lower in 2021, as without Biden in office there is no right-wing war on vaccines to try and keep the death toll high. Millions of right-wingers line up to get vaccinated, with fights breaking out as demand outstrips supply. There is no anti-vax movement, there are no claims that the vaccine is killing thousands, etc. Several 100,000 people who died in the summer and fall of 2021 don't. By mid-2023, the COVID death toll in the USA is 200,000. There would totally be an anti-vax movement. It would just be the same weird hippie left fringe group it was before COVID and wouldn't have spread nearly as far. The left hippie fringe people are merging with the right-wing anti-vaxxers now. It's crazy. An expert on NPR called it conspirituality. There's also a solid chance COVID would have taken out Trump as he campaigned. Without the benefits of being president and then ex-president, he would not have had automatic access to good doctors and would probably have gone with charlatans and Steve Jobsed himself off this mortal coil. No, in this universe the right now hates Trump with the fury of a billion burning suns. Trump is the moron who let Hillary get elected. Right-wingers deny voting for him in 2016. Trump's ramblings on Twitter about using anti-parasite meds against a virus is what makes the GOP pass the Social Media Emergency Act, in order to shut him up and stop making the GOP look bad. I'm not sure Trump gets to run in 2020 again if he lost the general in 2016. I actually disagree with Hillary losing re-election in 2020, because when a crisis happens, that's actually historically been a second wind for an incumbent, if they treat the crisis seriously, which Trump refused to do. He was actually handed a re-election win on a silver platter and completely bungled it by being so vain and proud he had to cover up the seriousness of the pandemic. If you don't believe me, world leaders who treated the pandemic seriously generally got re-elected and world leaders who didn't got booted. A more obvious example is how George Bush's approval rating skyrocketed in the aftermath of 9/11. Like he had more than 80% approval from the whole country. That's unheard of today. The reaction to the pandemic was make or break. If Hillary Clinton had shown she was doing everything she could to lower the deaths, it could actually have saved her if her approval numbers were slipping.